Bee-lightful Botanicals. I'm a Baldwin County native. Been working with plants pretty much all my life. I've always been fascinated by plants. And then about 20 years ago, when my children were young and started bringing home the sniffles, I started working with elderberry, and my fascination with medicinal and edible properties of plants just continued to grow. And so I focus on bioregional herbalism, and basically all that means is we work with plants that are as close to you as possible. We're going to focus on really getting out and foraging for the things that we need to make our medicinal products. And when you work with plants bioregionally, it's a more sustainable way of practicing herbalism. You don't have to worry about the plants traveling to you. You're doing the traveling to the plants. You know that you've got a quality plant because you foraged it yourself. And when you're working with plants that are from your region, it's fascinating that the good bacteria that you're working with will help improve your gut biome. So quality plants, you know that they were foraged ethically because you've got out and done it yourself. And it's when you start working with plants that are native to you, you really start getting this sense of preserving the ecosystem, which I think is very important, especially for somewhere like us where we have such a diverse and rare ecosystem. We have more plant species. We're some of the most diverse places in the world. We're considered America's Amazon. We have more turtle species than anywhere else in the world, which I think is fascinating. I'm a turtle fan myself. So just really getting out and seeing the plants that are around you, and you would be fascinated what you can work with literally right outside your door. Even now that the snow has cleared, we could still get out and find edible and medicinal plants. And we have such a mild climate most of the time that you can get out and forage something all year round. So making sure you have quality plants, foraging ethically, being sustainable. These are just reasons why you would want to focus on bioregional herbalism. Supporting your local farmers is very important too. We have a lot of great farmers around here that do some herbs. The market that they have in Foley on 20 every Saturday is a really great place to get out and meet your local farmers. And you can find some herbs there as well. You've got L&F Homestead there that always has some great herbalism products, and she works with bioregional herbalism as well. Then you have Knievel Farms, which you can always get like turmeric, garlic, and those kind of things from him. So some really great local people. You can always find Tanner there as well to get your mushrooms from him. Another thing that about bioregional herbalism that has really been a great thing for me is mental health. Getting out and having that connection with nature has made a world of difference for me, for my anxiety levels. And it's really like a spiritual experience to get out and work with the plant and learn about that plant. With me, before I work with the plant, I will basically live with it for a year. I will watch its whole life cycle from the time it comes up out of the ground to the time it goes dormant. I will study that plant for a whole year, learn everything I can about it, and then about a year after working with it and really sitting with it, that's when I'll start working with it medicinally. And to me, that really just gives you a relationship with the plant. And you learn what you need from it. It learns what you need. Really a great way to work with it like that. Another thing is living seasonally. I think is really important. Something that we have gotten away from, in this modern age. So for me, I get really excited when I know the seasons are going to change, and I think about the plants that are coming up. Right now, I'm excited about chickweed coming back out. The cleavers coming back out, and all those spring edibles that are really delicious and nutritious. When you've had a slow winter and then those beautiful spring greens start popping up, they are full of vitamins, minerals, and movers that we need to start getting ready to be productive for the year. In the winter time, I feel like it's very important to rest, and if you work in seasonally, you just see that happening in nature. It's just a really great way to live, in my opinion.
You said
So, yeah.
You said chickweed. What was the other one you said?
Cleavers. Yep. And normally I would have bring some of those with us, but the snow kind of halted that for us. But I was really fascinated after the snow thawed, which is something that, you know, I've never really seen it to that level around here. I've never really seen it at that level in my whole life. Just what was still alive underneath, like the Florida betony was still green, and probably could have picked some cleavers to bring today. So I just found that really fascinating, that nature really knows what it's doing, even when we're not, when we don't think we know what it's doing. So some really important things when you get out and start foraging is foraging safely. So of course the number one most important thing when you're foraging is to ensure that you have a positive identification. And like I said, working with the plant for a good amount of time before you start actually ingesting it is a great way to do that. Before you harvest a plant to work with it either edibly or medicinally, you need to be able to identify that plant at all life cycles. And they will look different through all life cycles too. So really get to know your plants, make sure you got that positive identification. Some great ways to learn to ID plants positively are getting some good identification books, and there's a ton of them out there. If anybody wants my book recommendation list, just stop by my table and give me your email address and I'll send that to you. Plant identifying apps are a great way to start, but don't ever rely on those for 100% identification, because I would say they're wrong at least 25 to 50% of the time. A lot of the times it will give you the plant family that it's in, and that's always a good place to start, and then you can go from there to get a really good identification. Learning a few botany terms are really great ways to learn to identify plants properly, and if you get a good identification book, it will usually have those terms in the front and the back. The way a plant attaches to the stem, the way the leaves, the margins on a leaf are. These are really great ways to identify plants. Let's say black cherry, our native black cherry, for instance. It has a serrated leaf, but cherry laurel has a clean margined leaf. And those two can be really, you could mistake one for the other very easily, unless you knew that just key characteristic to look at those leaf margins. So that's just a good example to give you of why it's important to learn those botany terms and how to use them. Moving on from there, foraging ethically is really important. You never want to take more than you leave behind on a plant. When I find a plant that I want to forage, if there's only, let's say, 10 of those plants in an area, I'm not going to take any from that area. I want to make sure that there's enough for that plant to reproduce, and if there's some wildlife around that wanted to enjoy that plant as well, want to make sure you leave plenty of that. If there's plenty of a plant in an area, you never want to take more than 1 in 5. So that's just a good rule of thumb when you're foraging. There's certain plants that you might not take from the wild at all because they are so rare. And usually there's another plant that you could work with in its place. So let's see, identifying books. When you're working with a new herb for the first time, it's always important to just ingest a very small amount. And you always want to use one new herb, by itself. You wouldn't want to try 2 new plants in one day. If you got an upset tummy from one, you wouldn't know which one, gave you that upset tummy. So really good to always start small and take a small amount for your first time. Never want to harvest 30 feet from a roadway. You always want to be 30 feet away from a roadway. Always want to make sure there aren't any farm fields nearby that may have been oversprayed. So always forage away from farm fields, away from the roadways. You got to think about road pollution. Think about if there were any animal presence in that area. But there's plenty of great places to forage here. We still have a lot of good foraging lands. Always do your research. the techniques of wildcrafting once you forage the plant are very easy. The hard part comes from the research. I could go out and find a plant and make a tincture from it in 5 to 10 minutes, but the research that I'm going to have to do on that plant is going to take me hours. So very important to do your research, because the way one plant works for you might work different from somebody else. So always want to do your research on that. And if you're anything like me, if I do a Google search and I come up with a lot of information, it might just be too much and then I'm just done with it, So find some herbalists that you really trust and go to them first for your information. And, look at 2 or 3 different spots for info, but don't get overwhelmed with it, because when you're working with plants, you're going to find that a lot of people, everybody does things in their own way. So you might find some contradicting information. So find somebody that you trust and go to them first. So after you've been out and you've foraged your plants, now it's time to come back and do some wildcrafting. Most of the plants you're going to forage you can work with right away, but then you can dry and preserve them, and there's lots of great ways to preserve them. When I'm drying plants, I like to just lay them out in baskets to dry. You can use a dehydrator, but for a lot of plants that might be a little too much heat. So hanging them in bundles to dry, laying them out in baskets, and then from there you can just make teas. It's a really great way to use the plants that you forage. You can do tinctures, which all that a tincture is a plant that has been macerated in alcohol to extract those herbal constituents. And those are a great way because they last indefinitely and they're easy to take. If you have a dried herb stored, that's only going to last, a year. Some plants you might get to last about 2 years, but a tincture is going to last indefinitely. You can also preserve those plants in vinegar. You can make a syrup. I could go on and on about the different things you can do. A lot of your plants that you wildcraft, you want to use for topical uses. A lot of those plants you can use as is. A lot of them you want to infuse into an oil and then make a salve. So really tons of different ways you can use your plants. Syrups is another good one. I know everybody's familiar with elderberry syrup. A really important thing to keep in your herbal apothecary this time of year to keep your immune system updated. So from there, some of the things that we are harvesting right now, even with the weather that we've gotten, we're harvesting turkey tail, crossvine, like Holly was talking about yucca. In herbalism, we use yucca as an anti-inflammatory. So I love to see the different uses of plants. Pine is another one that we're always harvesting. Pine is full of vitamin C. It's full of stomatic acid, which is going to help your body fight off viruses. Tons of different ways you can use pine. You can use the needles green in a tea. You could ferment them with a little bit of sugar and have like a pine soda. You can use the pine resin topically. Just like it's the pine tree's Band-Aid, you can use it that way. You can infuse it into oil and then make you a salve. One of my favorite things about pine is to work with the pollen. The pollen is like, in the spring everybody's agitated by it, but the pine pollen is full of life force. It's really great to give your body an energy boost. It really has an affinity for men. It's really great for a testosterone a boost for men. But really great for men or women. But I just feel like it really has that masculine energy that really resonates with men. I feel like I'm forgetting something on pine. It's got the pollen, the needles, the resin. Pine's one I could talk about all day, guys. All day. So if you want to see the different ways that you can use these herbs that you forage for, just stop by my booth and I can show you tinctures, salves, and tea blends. And like I said, it's really been a confidence builder for me and a really great source of just like inspiration to get out and find things that are right here I mean, in any given moment, I could take you out and I guarantee you we'd find 25, 30, 40 plants to talk about, and I could go on about them all day. So if you're interested, we do foraging walks quite often. Me, Tanner, and another friend of ours, Melissa, we team up, and we just did one a couple of weeks ago. We're planning on doing another one in February, and we like to bounce. We'll either be in Mobile or Baldwin County. So follow me on Facebook, Bee-lightful Botanicals, or Mushroom Man Tan, or Cedar and Moon Apothecary if you're interested in getting out and foraging with us. We also do classes. You can find my products at Cooper Farm in Foley. We have a little classroom there where we do all kinds of fun classes, and those will be gearing back up next month. So if you're interested in learning to forage or process your foraged goods, join me for a class. And thank you guys for listening to me ramble on.